I buried my son on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, his wife told me I had 3 days to pack up and leave the house I'd lived in for 40 years. She had the papers, the signatures, the proof that that's what my son wished for before he passed. But then I found his wedding ring sitting on my kitchen counter, the one he swore he'd never take off. And that's when I started to wonder, what if the closed casket wasn't hiding injuries? What if it was hiding the truth? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comment section what time it is where you're watching. I've spent 30 years running into burning buildings, pulled families from smoke-filled rooms, carried unconscious strangers down ladder trucks while flames licked at my boots. I thought I knew what fear felt like. But standing in my own living room, staring at my daughter-in-law Victoria, I realized I'd never truly understood terror until that moment. "You have 3 days to pack your things and leave, Mason." Her voice was flat, clinical, like she was reading off a grocery list instead of ripping apart what remained of my life. We'd just buried my son an hour ago. Ethan, my boy, my only child. The funeral flowers were still fresh in the truck bed outside, and here she was, dressed in black, not a single tear staining her perfectly composed face. "What are you talking about?" My throat felt like sandpaper. "This is my house. I've lived here for 40 years. Victoria pulled a stack of papers from her designer handbag, the one Ethan bought her last Christmas, and set them on the coffee table between us. "Actually, it's not. Ethan transferred the deed to me 6 months ago. Everything's in my name now. The house, the bank accounts, his truck, all of it." The room tilted. "That's impossible. Ethan would have told me." "Would he?" She tilted her head, almost sympathetic, almost. "Mason, you and Ethan weren't as close as you think. He made his choices. He chose me. And now that he's gone, I'm choosing to move forward alone." My hands curled into fists. Every instinct screamed at me to throw her out, to call a lawyer, to do something. But my mind was still stuck 3 hours back, standing beside a closed casket, wondering why I couldn't see my son one last time. "I want to see the paperwork," I managed. "You're looking at it." She tapped the documents with one manicured nail. "It's all legal. I had everything notarized. You're not listed as a beneficiary anywhere, Mason. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. You can leave peacefully, or I can involve the sheriff. Your choice." The way she said "sorry," like she was apologizing for bad weather, I wanted to scream, to argue, to call her the liar I knew she was. But grief sat on my chest like a collapsed beam, pinning me down, stealing my breath. Ethan was gone. My Linda was gone. And now this woman, this stranger who'd wormed her way into my family 3 years ago, was taking the last piece of them I had left. 3 days, she repeated, heading toward the door. "I'd start packing if I were you." She was halfway out when I saw it. On the kitchen counter, gleaming under the afternoon light streaming through the window, Ethan's wedding ring. The gold band with Ethan and Victoria's initials engraved on the inside, the one he swore he'd never take off. "It's part of me now, Dad," he'd told me at the reception, grinning like a kid. "Till death do us part, right?" So why wasn't he wearing it in that casket? Why was it sitting on my counter like forgotten pocket change? Victoria's heels clicked down the driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. And I was going to find out what. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Ethan's old bedroom, the one I'd kept exactly as he left it when he moved out, and let the memories flood in. Ethan wasn't supposed to be an only child. Linda and I had planned for 3, maybe 4 kids. But after a difficult pregnancy, the doctors said 1 was all we'd get. So we poured everything into that boy. Every ounce of love, every life lesson, every Saturday morning. I remembered teaching him to fish at Lake Norman when he was 7. His little hands could barely grip the rod, but he was determined. Caught a bass twice the size of his head and wouldn't stop talking about it for weeks. Linda took a photo of us holding it together, his gap-toothed grin pressed against my cheek. That picture still sat on my nightstand. I remembered bringing him to the firehouse on career day when he was 10. He wore my oversized helmet, climbed into the truck, and told everyone he was going to be a firefighter just like his dad. He didn't end up following that path, became an accountant instead, but the pride in his eyes that day never left me. And I remembered the last 5 years. After Linda passed, Ethan showed up every Sunday without fail. We'd grill burgers, watch football, talk about everything and nothing. He never let me feel alone. Even after he married Victoria, he made time. Always made time. Until he didn't. The last 6 months had been different. Canceled plans, vague excuses, phone calls that felt rushed and distant. I blamed myself, figured maybe I was leaning on him too hard, asking too much. Victoria had mentioned wanting to start a family. Maybe he needed space. But now, sitting in the dark, something gnawed at me. The funeral. It had felt wrong from the moment I walked in. The funeral home was 2 hours away in Greenville, nowhere near where the accident supposedly happened. Victoria handled everything. Every detail, every decision. Closed casket is best, she insisted when I asked to see him. The accident was severe, Mason. You don't want that image in your head. Trust me. But I'd seen severe. I'd pulled bodies from wreckage that would haunt most people for life. I could have handled it. I needed to handle it, to say goodbye properly. And then there was the cremation, scheduled for the very next morning. No viewing, no wake, no time to process. It's what Ethan wanted, Victoria had said, showing me a document with his signature. But Ethan had always talked about being buried next to Linda. He'd told me that just last year. So why did Victoria have paperwork saying otherwise? I picked up Ethan's wedding ring from where I'd placed it on the dresser, turned it over in my palm. Something wasn't adding up, and I was starting to think my son's funeral had been a lie. By dawn, I'd made a list, not of what to pack. Victoria could wait on that. No, this was a list of every single thing about Ethan's death that didn't make sense. And the more I wrote, the longer it got. First, the location. Victoria claimed the accident happened on Highway 77, just outside Charlotte. So why was the funeral home in Greenville? That's a 2-hour drive in the opposite direction. When I'd asked her about it, she'd said something about it being highly recommended and having availability. But my son dies, and we're worried about availability? Second, the accident report. I never saw one. Not a single page. Victoria said the police were still processing it, that it would take weeks to get the official documents. But I'd worked alongside law enforcement for 3 decades. Accident reports, especially fatal ones, get filed within days, sometimes hours. I'd called the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department yesterday. They had no record of any fatal accident involving Ethan Hartley on Highway 77. Not last week, not last month. Nothing. Maybe try the highway patrol, the dispatcher had suggested. I did. Same answer. No record. How does a man die in a car accident with no police report? Third, the body. I never saw it. Not once. Victoria had been a wall on this from the beginning. Closed casket, Mason. Non-negotiable. The injuries were too severe. But here's what kept eating at me. I'd seen severe. I'd scraped what was left of people off pavement. I'd held grieving parents back from wreckage that would destroy them. I knew what trauma looked like. And I also knew that funeral homes could work miracles. Reconstruction, cosmetics. They could make viewable what seemed impossible. So why was Victoria so adamant I couldn't see him? What was she hiding? Fourth, the cremation timeline. Ethan was supposedly cremated less than 12 hours after the funeral. I'd been too deep in shock to question it then, but now it felt insane. Cremations require permits, family consent, documentation. Victoria had everything ready to go, like she'd planned it. And that's when it hit me. I'd never signed anything. I sat up straight, my pulse hammering. As Ethan's father, as his only living parent, I was legally his next of kin, which meant I should have been the one making decisions, signing off on funeral arrangements, approving the cremation. But Victoria handled everything. Every single thing. I grabbed my phone and called the funeral home in Greenville. A woman answered on the third ring. "This is Mason Hartley. My son, Ethan Hartley, was cremated at your facility 2 days ago. I need to know who signed the authorization forms." A pause. Keyboard clicks. "Let me pull that file." "Okay, yes. The authorization was signed by Victoria Hartley, listed as spouse and primary decision maker." "What about next of kin consent?" "I'm his father." More clicking. "According to our records, Mrs. Hartley provided documentation showing she had full authority. There's a note here that the father was, let me see, estranged and not involved in decision-making." My blood turned to ice. I was at the funeral. "I'm sorry, sir, but that's what our paperwork indicates." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Estranged. Victoria had told them I was estranged. She'd cut me out of my own son's death. And suddenly, a terrifying thought crept in. What if there was no body to view? Because there was no body at all. I'd spent 3 decades reading fire reports, incident logs, safety inspections. You learn to spot inconsistencies, the details that don't quite line up, the signatures that look rushed, the timelines that make no sense. So, when I pulled out the stack of documents Victoria had left on my coffee table, I read them like my life depended on it. Because maybe it did. The deed transfer was dated 6 months ago, February 14th, Valentine's Day. According to this paperwork, Ethan had signed over the house, my house, the one I'd bought with Linda in 1985, completely to Victoria. No joint ownership, no contingencies, just a clean transfer. I stared at Ethan's signature at the bottom of the page. Something felt off. I pulled out my reading glasses and grabbed an old birthday card from my desk drawer. One Ethan had given me 2 years ago. Held them side by side under the lamp. The signature on the deed was close, very close. But the E in Ethan was different, rounder. The loop in the Y didn't extend as far, and the pressure of the pen seemed lighter, less confident. Could be nothing. People's signatures change over time, especially when they're signing legal documents quickly. But paired with everything else, it made my skin crawl. I moved on to the bank statements Victoria had included. Proof that Ethan had consolidated our joint savings into an account solely under his name, then transferred it all to her after his death. Except
The transfer date was 3 days before the accident. Why would Ethan move every penny we had right before he died? I grabbed my laptop and logged into the credit union website. Ethan and I had shared an account since he was 16, originally for his first car, then just kept it active for emergencies. I'd honestly forgotten about it until now. The login still worked. And my heart nearly stopped. The account was active. Not frozen, not flagged, active. I scrolled through the recent transactions, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. August 2nd. Withdrawal. $300, ATM in Columbia, South Carolina. August 4th. Withdrawal, $200, ATM in Asheville, North Carolina. August 6th. Debit card purchase, $47.83, gas station outside Knoxville, Tennessee. August 8th, yesterday. Withdrawal, $150, ATM in Memphis. Dead men don't use ATMs. Dead men don't buy gas in Tennessee. I sat back, the laptop screen blurring in front of me. My mind raced through possibilities, each one more insane than the last. Identity theft? Maybe someone stole Ethan's cards before he died. But that didn't explain the timing. These transactions started after the funeral, after the cremation. A mistake? Banks freeze accounts when someone dies. It's automatic. The funeral home, the death certificate, those trigger flags in the system. Unless no death certificate was ever filed. I opened a new tab and pulled up the North Carolina Vital Records database. Typed in Ethan's name, date of birth, social security number. I had it memorized from filling out 1,000 forms over the years. No death certificate on file. I checked South Carolina thinking maybe the out-of-state funeral home had processed it differently. Nothing. My son was legally alive. I stood up so fast the chair tipped backward and crashed to the floor. My chest heaved. The room spun. Ethan wasn't dead. He couldn't be. The evidence was right there. ATM withdrawals, no death certificate, active accounts. Either someone was impersonating him, or Victoria had lied about everything. I looked at the documents scattered across the table. The forged signatures, the rushed cremation of a body I never saw, the 3-day eviction notice designed to get me out before I could ask questions. This wasn't grief. This wasn't inheritance. This was a cover-up. And my son was out there somewhere, alive, while his wife tried to bury us both.
I didn't sleep that night either. By 6 a.m., I was pacing my kitchen with cold coffee and a phone full of numbers I hadn't called in months. First call, Greg Brennan. We'd worked together at Station 9 for 15 years before he transferred to the marshal's office. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was Greg. He answered on the second ring. Mason? Everything okay? No, my voice cracked. Greg, I need your help. Something's wrong with Ethan's death. Silence. Then, what do you mean wrong? I told him everything. The closed casket, the out-of-state funeral home, the missing accident report, the bank transactions happening after Ethan was supposedly cremated. Jesus, Mason. He exhaled slowly. Have you called the police? And tell them what? That my daughter-in-law might have faked my son's death based on ATM withdrawals and a gut feeling? They'd laugh me out of the station. Not if you have evidence, which it sounds like you do. He paused. Look, I could make some calls, quietly. Check if there's any record of this accident through back channels. But Mason, you need legal help. Real legal help. This is bigger than... I know. I rubbed my eyes. I'm calling someone next. Good. And Mason? His voice dropped. Be careful. If Victoria is capable of what you're thinking, she's not going to take kindly to you digging around. Second call. Patricia Lowell. She'd handled Linda's estate when she passed, helped us with the will and paperwork. Sharp as they come, and didn't take nonsense from anyone. "Mason Hartley," she said warmly when she picked up. "I heard about Ethan. I'm so sorry for your... Patricia. He might not be dead." The line went quiet for 3 full seconds. "You better come to my office, now." An hour later, I sat across from Patricia in her downtown Charlotte office, the evidence spread across her mahogany desk. Bank statements, deed transfers, funeral home records. She studied each document with the precision of a surgeon, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Finally, she looked up. "Mason, I'm going to be blunt with you. What you're describing is either massive financial fraud, identity theft, or something even darker." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, darker?" "If Victoria fabricated your son's death to steal assets, forge signatures, and cut you out of inheritance, we're talking multiple felonies, fraud, forgery, possibly elder financial abuse, since you're over 60 and she's manipulating property that was partially yours. But..." Patricia's expression softened. "I hope you're right, but we need to prepare for all possibilities." She tapped the bank statement. "These transactions could mean he's alive and in danger, or alive and involved. Either way, we need to act fast." "What do I do?" "First, we file an emergency injunction to freeze all asset transfers. Second, we demand proof of death, a real death certificate, coroner's report, everything. Third," she leaned forward, "we hire a private investigator to track those ATM locations. If Ethan's alive, we'll find him. And if Victoria tries to throw me out in 3 days..." Patricia's jaw tightened. "Let her try. She won't like what happens next."
The drive to Greenville took 2 hours, but it felt like 10. Every mile, my mind spun through scenarios. Best case, administrative error. Worst case, my son faked his death and abandoned me. I didn't know which would hurt more. Thompson & Sons funeral services sat at the end of a quiet street, tucked between a tax office and a pawn shop. The building was older than I expected. Faded brick, peeling paint on the window frames. Not exactly the highly recommended establishment Victoria had described. A bell chimed when I walked in. The lobby smelled like lilies and lemon cleaner. A young woman sat behind the reception desk, mid-20s, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, startled. "Hi, can I help you?" "I hope so." I kept my voice steady. "My name is Mason Hartley. My son, Ethan Hartley, was cremated here 3 days ago. I need to speak with whoever handled the arrangements." Her face shifted. Recognition, then something else. Discomfort. "Oh, Mr. Thompson is with a family right now. Maybe I can help?" "I need to see the original paperwork, the cremation authorization, the death certificate." She hesitated. "I'd have to check with..." "Please." I leaned on the desk, lowering my voice. "I just lost my son. I need answers. That's all." Her expression softened. "Okay, let me pull the file." She disappeared into a back office. I heard filing cabinets opening, papers shuffling. When she returned, she carried a thin manila folder, too thin for someone who'd supposedly been cremated. "Here's what we have on file." She opened it carefully, keeping it angled away from me. Mrs. Hartley handled everything directly, signed the authorization forms, provided the death certificate, and arranged for cremation. "Can I see the death certificate?" She bit her lip. "It's not in here." Mrs. Hartley said she'd provide a copy later. We proceeded based on her verbal assurance and spousal authority. My jaw tightened. You cremated someone without verifying a death certificate? We had a physician's statement. She pulled out a single sheet. Dr. Kenneth Arroyo from Charlotte Memorial confirmed the death. That's technically sufficient in South Carolina if the spouse consents. I'd never heard of Dr. Kenneth Arroyo. And Charlotte Memorial had 20 physicians on staff. Easy to fake a name. Can I get a copy of this? I'd have to ask Mr. Thompson. Please. My hands gripped the desk edge. I'm his father. I have a right to know what happened to my son. She glanced toward the back office, conflicted. Then, quickly, she pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of the document. I'll text it to you. What's your number? I gave it to her. A second later, my phone buzzed. Thank you, I said. One more question. Did you personally see the body? Her face went pale. No, it arrived in a sealed transport container from the medical examiner. We're not supposed to open those. And you cremated that container? Yes, sir. Standard procedure for... The door to the back office swung open. An older man in a dark suit stepped out. Thompson, I assumed. His eyes locked onto mine, then flicked to the young woman. Candace, I'll handle this. His tone was sharp. She stepped back immediately, nervous. Sorry, Mr. Thompson, I was just... Go take your break. She nodded and scurried out a side door, avoiding eye contact with me. Thompson approached, his smile professional but strained. Mr. Hartley, I understand you have concerns about your son's cremation. I assure you, everything was handled properly. Was it? I held his gaze. Because I've got bank records showing activity on his accounts after you supposedly cremated him. His smile faltered. Just a flicker, but I caught it. That's impossible. We cremated... Candace, a voice called from the back. Another clerk poked her head out. Did you finish filing the Hartley cancellation paperwork? Thompson's face went white. The clerk froze. Oh, sorry, I thought... Cancellation. I stepped forward. What cancellation? Thompson moved between us. That was a different client, common name. But I'd already seen the truth in his eyes. No, my voice dropped. You're talking about my son, aren't you? The clerk, realizing her mistake, stammered, I thought you were the father of the man who canceled his own cremation. Out now! Thompson pointed to the back. But it was too late. Ethan had canceled his own cremation. My son was alive. I didn't leave Thompson and Sons quietly. I demanded answers, records, proof. Thompson threatened to call the police, but I stood my ground until he finally admitted the truth. There was no body. The sealed transport container Victoria had delivered contained sandbags. Weighted to feel authentic. Ethan had never been cremated because Ethan had never died. The whole thing was theater. I drove back to Charlotte in a blur, my hands shaking on the wheel. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Victoria's car was already there. She stood on my porch, arms crossed, looking impatient. You missed our meeting with the movers, she said coolly. We agreed you'd start packing today. I climbed out of the truck, slamming the door harder than necessary. Where is he? Her expression didn't change. Excuse me? Ethan, where is my son? For just a second, barely a heartbeat, something flickered across her face. Fear? Surprise? Then it vanished, replaced by that same manufactured concern she'd worn since the funeral. Mason, I know grief does strange things to people. Cut the act, Victoria. I stepped closer. I went to the funeral home. There was no body, no cremation, just sandbags in a box. She blinked slowly, like I'd spoken a foreign language. That's absurd. You're not thinking clearly. Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist? Grief counseling? Stop. My voice was steel. I know he's alive. The bank accounts, the ATM withdrawals, the canceled cremation. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is Ethan? Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes went cold. Then she laughed. It was soft, pitying, the kind of laugh you'd give a confused child. Mason, listen to yourself. You sound paranoid, unhinged. If you keep spreading these accusations, people are going to think you've lost your mind. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. And when I contest the will or the deed transfer, do you know what my lawyer will say? That you're a grieving old man who can't accept his son's death, that you're mentally unstable. You forged his signature. Prove it, she smiled. You have 2 days left, Mason. I suggest you use them wisely. Pack your things, move on. Because if you keep digging, I will bury you. She turned and walked to her car, heels clicking against the driveway. I watched her drive away, my heart hammering against my ribs. She wasn't just lying. She was threatening me. That night, I sat in the dark staring at Ethan's wedding ring on the coffee table. Patricia had filed the injunction. Greg was digging through fire marshal contacts. But everything felt too slow, too fragile. What if I was wrong? What if Ethan really was? My phone rang. Unknown number. Blocked caller ID. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Silence. Just breathing on the other end. Who is this? Then faint. So faint I almost missed it. A voice whispered through the static. Dad? My blood turned to ice. Ethan? The breathing quickened, panicked, desperate. Don't trust her. Don't trust. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling, my pulse roaring in my ears. That was my son's voice. Ethan was alive, and he was in danger.
I didn't sleep after that phone call. I replayed it 1,000 times in my head, trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined it. Ethan's voice, the panic, the warning. By morning, I knew what I had to do. Patricia had given me a name, Gabrielle Torres, former FBI agent turned private investigator specializing in financial fraud and missing persons. If anyone could find Ethan, it was her. Her office was in a nondescript building in uptown Charlotte, 3rd floor, unmarked door. I knocked twice before a woman in her mid-40s opened it, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. Mason Hartley? That's me. She gestured me inside. The office was sparse. Desk, computer, filing cabinets, a wall covered in maps and photographs connected by red string like something out of a crime show. Patricia filled me in on the basics, Gabrielle said, sitting behind her desk. Fake funeral, forged documents, possible staged death, and you got a phone call last night. From Ethan, I'm sure of it. She pulled out a notepad. Did you record it? No, it happened too fast. That's okay. We'll work with what we have. She opened her laptop. I've already started pulling financial records based on what Patricia sent over. And Mason, I have to tell you, what I'm seeing is not small-time fraud. This is sophisticated. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She turned the screen toward me. These are Ethan's bank transactions over the last 6 months. Notice anything? I scanned the list. Transfers, withdrawals, payments to companies I didn't recognize. It's a lot of money moving around. Exactly. $300,000 to be precise. Drained from your joint accounts, his personal savings, even a retirement fund. She clicked to another screen, and look where it went. A series of wire transfers, all to offshore accounts. Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, Switzerland. Offshore? My voice cracked. Why would Ethan? Because someone was helping him hide it. Or, she paused, someone was stealing it and making it look like he authorized it. Victoria. That's my guess, but here's where it gets interesting. She pulled up another document, a travel log. I cross-referenced credit card activity, flight manifests, and border entry records. 2 weeks ago, someone used Ethan's passport to enter the Bahamas. The room tilted. He's alive. Looks that way. The entry was flagged as routine. No red flags, no warrants, just a regular guy on vacation. She zoomed in on a blurry security photo from the airport. Dark hair, medium build, sunglasses, and a baseball cap obscuring his face. I leaned closer. It could have been anyone. But the build was right. The height. The way he stood, shoulders slightly hunched. Ethan always did that when he was nervous. That's him. My voice shook. That's my son. Gabrielle nodded slowly. I think so too. But Mason, if he's alive and traveling internationally, that means one of two things. Either he's running from Victoria, or he's working with her. The words felt like a knife. He called me. He warned me about her. I believe you, but we need proof. Hard evidence. She clicked to another screen. I've got a contact in Nassau who can check hotel registries, ATM footage, anything that might place him physically. If Ethan's still there, we'll find him. How long will that take? 48 hours, maybe less. 2 days. The same amount of time Victoria had given me to leave my house. What do I do until then? Gabrielle's expression hardened. You stay alert. Don't confront Victoria again. She's already threatened you once. Don't answer unknown calls without recording them. And for God's sake, don't go anywhere alone. If Victoria realizes you're getting close to the truth, she might escalate. Escalate how? She met my eyes. Mason, your daughter-in-law faked a death, forged legal documents, and moved hundreds of thousands of dollars offshore. Someone that calculated doesn't stop halfway. If she thinks you're a threat... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I stood, my legs unsteady. Find him, please. I will. She handed me a business card with a second number scrawled on the back. That's my personal cell. Call me the second anything feels off. I took the card and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Gabrielle called out, Mason. I turned. Your son reached out to you for a reason. He's counting on you. Don't let him down. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Ethan was alive. In the Bahamas. And somewhere between here and there, the truth was waiting. I just had to survive long enough to find it.
The Mecklenburg County Records Office opened at 8 a.m. I was there at 7:45, first in line, coffee in hand and determination in my chest. The clerk behind the counter was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain. She smiled when I approached. Morning. How can I help you? I need to pull a death certificate. Ethan Hartley died August 1st in a car accident on Highway 77. She typed into her computer, her smile fading to concentration. Date of birth? I gave it to her. She typed some more. Frowned. I'm not seeing anything under that name for August. Can you check July? Maybe there was a filing delay. More typing, more frowning. Nothing in July either. Are you sure about the location? Sometimes deaths get filed in the county where they occurred, not where the person lived. The accident was supposedly in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. She shook her head slowly. Sir, I'm showing no death certificate for anyone named Ethan Hartley in the past 6 months. If he died in this county, we'd have a record. I pulled out my phone and showed her the funeral program Victoria had printed. This says he died August 1st. There was a funeral, a cremation. Her expression shifted to concern. Then someone filed fraudulent paperwork or, she hesitated, or there was no death to report. Can you print me a statement, something official, saying there's no record?
She nodded. Give me 5 minutes. Next stop? North Carolina Highway Patrol Headquarters. I'd called ahead, as for Sergeant Wade Kimball, an old contact from my firefighter days. He met me in the lobby. His uniform crisp, his handshake firm. Mason, Patricia told me you might be stopping by. I need accident reports for Highway 77. August 1st. Fatal collision involving Ethan Hartley. Wade led me to a back office and pulled up the database. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, but his face told me everything I needed to know. There's no report, Mason. No accidents at all on Highway 77 that day. In fact, August 1st was pretty quiet across the board. A fender bender in Concord, a DUI stop near the state line. That's it. I slumped in the chair. So Victoria lied about all of it. It looks that way. Wade printed the search results and handed them to me. This shows every incident logged that day. Your son's name isn't anywhere. If he died in the car accident in North Carolina, we'd know. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. Official proof. No death certificate, no accident report. Ethan's death had been a complete fabrication. Wade, what do I do with this? You take it to your lawyer. File charges. This is fraud, forgery, maybe even extortion, depending on how deep it goes. He leaned forward. Mason, be careful. Someone who goes this far doesn't stop easily. I thanked him and left, my phone already ringing before I reached the truck. Gabrielle. Mason, I've got something. What? Ethan didn't just enter the Bahamas under his own passport. 3 days later, he boarded a connecting flight to Grand Cayman under a false name, Ryan Caldwell. Paid cash. No return ticket. Grand Cayman? Why would he? Because that's where the money is. The offshore accounts Victoria set up, they're all based in Grand Cayman. Mason, your son isn't running from her.
My heart sank. He's working with her. I texted Victoria that evening. You're right. I need to accept reality. Can we meet tomorrow to go over the moving timeline? Her response came 2 minutes later. Finally. 10 a.m. My place. Patricia had provided the recording device, a tiny pen that looked completely ordinary but captured crystal clear audio. Gabrielle coached me on what to say, how to push without seeming aggressive. Get her comfortable, Gabrielle had said. Let her think she's won. People confess when they feel safe. I arrived at Victoria's condo at exactly 10 a.m. She answered the door in yoga pants and a silk blouse, looking relaxed, victorious. Mason, come in. The place was immaculate. Modern furniture, abstract art on the walls. No photos of Ethan anywhere. I noticed that immediately. Coffee? She offered. No thanks. I sat on the leather couch, the recording pen clipped to my shirt pocket. I've been thinking about what you said, about moving on. She settled into the chair across from me, crossing her legs. I'm glad you're being reasonable. It's just hard, you know? Losing Ethan so suddenly. I keep replaying that day, the funeral. Everything felt so rushed. Her expression remained neutral. Grief makes time feel distorted. Maybe. But some things don't add up. Like why the funeral was in Greenville instead of Charlotte, or why I never saw the accident report. Her jaw tightened slightly. We've been over this. I know, and I'm not trying to cause problems. I need closure. Can you at least show me the death certificate, the official one? Victoria stood up. Mason, I don't have time for this. We had an agreement. I went to the records office. There's no death certificate on file. No accident report either. She froze. Just for a second. Then she laughed. That same condescending sound from before. That's administrative delay. These things take time. It's been over a week. Sometimes it takes months. You're grasping at straws because you can't accept that he's gone. I should have noticed how nervous she was, but I was too focused on what I found.
His bank account is still active. Her back stiffened. There were withdrawals after the funeral, after the cremation, ATM transactions in South Carolina, Tennessee, even one in Memphis 2 days ago. Victoria turned, and for the first time I saw genuine fear flicker across her face. That's identity theft. It happens all the time when someone dies. Does it? Because I also found out that Ethan canceled his own cremation. The funeral home confirmed it. There was no body, Victoria, just sandbags in a box. Her composure cracked. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the counter. You're delusional. Am I? Because I also know about the offshore accounts, the $300,000 transferred to the Cayman Islands, and the passport entry showing Ethan flew to Nassau 2 weeks ago. Victoria's face went white. You're making this up. I have proof. Bank records, travel logs, witness statements from the funeral home. I pulled out my phone, showing her the documents Gabrielle had compiled. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is my son? Her breathing quickened. Her eyes darted toward the door, calculating. Mason, you don't understand. Then explain it to me. I can't. Why not? Because it's complicated. Her voice rose, sharp and desperate. Because you were never supposed to figure it out. You were supposed to grieve and move on and leave us alone. The room went silent. Us. Leave us alone? I repeated slowly. Victoria realized her mistake. Her hand flew to her mouth. You were never supposed to know Ethan is alive. The words burst out before she could stop them. We planned everything perfectly. The funeral, the paperwork, the accounts. You were supposed to believe it and walk away. My chest tightened. Hearing it out loud, the confirmation I'd been dreading. Why? I cracked. Why would you do this? Victoria's face twisted with something between rage and panic. She grabbed her phone off the counter. You need to leave now. Not until you tell me where he is. Get out, Mason, or I'm calling the police. Good. I pulled the recording pen from my pocket, holding it up. Because I just recorded everything you said, and my lawyer is going to have a heyday with it. Victoria's eyes widened. You recorded me? Every word. For a moment, she looked like she might lunge at me. Then her expression shifted, cold calculation replacing panic. That won't hold up in court. You recorded me without consent. Actually, North Carolina is a one-party consent state. I only needed my permission. I headed for the door. Tell Ethan his father's coming for him. And Victoria, you just confessed to fraud. I walked out before she could respond, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I had her confession. Now, I just needed to find my son.
Gabriel tracked down the hotel in Grand Cayman within 6 hours of Victoria's confession. The Meridian Resort, room 447, registered under Ryan Caldwell, Ethan's alias. I didn't hesitate. I booked the first flight out. 12 hours later, I stood outside that hotel room door, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I'd rehearsed what to say 100 times on the plane. But now, standing here, every word vanished. I knocked. Silence. I knocked again harder. Ethan, it's Dad. I know you're in there. Footsteps. Slow. Hesitant. Then the door cracked open, chain still attached. And there he was. My son. Alive. Thinner than I remembered. Beard grown out, eyes hollow and exhausted, but alive. Dad? His voice broke. How did you... Can I come in? He stared at me for a long moment, then unhooked the chain and stepped back. The room was sparse. Unmade bed, clothes scattered everywhere, empty takeout containers on the desk. He looked like a man who'd been running for weeks. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan closed the door quickly, checking the hallway before locking it. "If Victoria finds out, she already knows I'm looking for you." I turned to face him fully, emotions crashing over me in waves. Relief, anger, confusion, love. "Ethan, what the hell is going on?" He sank onto the bed, head in his hands. "I didn't want you involved in this." "Involved in what? Faking your own death? Stealing money? Watching your father grieve over an empty casket?" My voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what you put me through?" "I know." His eyes were red when he looked up. "I know, and I'm sorry, but Dad, you don't understand what she's capable of." "Then tell me." He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for months. "It started about a year ago. Victoria got involved with some people, investors, she called them, but they weren't legitimate. They were laundering money through fake real estate deals, and she convinced me to sign documents making me complicit." My stomach dropped. "Why would you do that?" "Because she said if I didn't, they'd come after you." His voice shook. "She knew about your pension, your savings, the house. She said they'd take everything from you if I didn't cooperate. So I signed." "Ethan!" "But then it got worse. The investors wanted more, bigger deals, and when I tried to back out, she told me they'd already forged my signature on federal documents. Tax fraud, money laundering. If I went to the police, I'd go to prison for 20 years. He stood, pacing. "So she came up with a plan. Fake my death, disappear. Let her collect the life insurance and offshore accounts, and I'd start over somewhere else." "And you believed her?" "I was desperate." He turned to me, tears streaming down his face. "I thought if I disappeared, at least you'd be safe. At least you'd get the house and move on. But then she turned on me. Kept all the money, threatened to expose me if I came back. I've been stuck here for weeks, afraid to leave, afraid to call anyone." I crossed the room and grabbed his shoulders. "Ethan, she tried to throw me out of my own house, forged your signature on deed transfers, told everyone I was estranged from you." His face crumpled. "Oh God, Dad, I'm so sorry." "Stop apologizing and listen." I pulled him into a hug, the first time I'd held my son in months. He collapsed against me, sobbing like a child. "We're going to fix this, together." "How?" "She's got lawyers, evidence. She'll send me to prison." "Not if we expose her first." I pulled back, looking him in the eye. "I recorded her confession. She admitted you're alive. Admitted to the fraud. We have witnesses from the funeral home, bank records, everything." Hope flickered in his expression. "You really think we can beat her?" "I know we can, but you have to come back with me. Face this head on." Fear replaced hope instantly. "Dad, if I come back, those investors will go to the FBI. Federal crimes mean federal protection. Gabriel has contacts. We'll get you immunity in exchange for testimony against Victoria and her partners. And if it doesn't work, then we fight like hell anyway, because I'm not losing you again, Ethan. Not to her, not to anyone." He managed a weak smile. "Just like old times?" "Just like old times." We packed his things in silence, both of us knowing that the hardest part was still ahead. Victoria thought she'd won, but she'd never counted on a father's love, and that was going to be her biggest mistake.
Patricia and Gabrielle orchestrated the entire thing. The Charlotte Firefighters Memorial Service happened every August, a community gathering at Station 9 to honor fallen heroes. This year, they'd added Ethan's name to the memorial wall, courtesy of Victoria's lies. It was the perfect stage. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked in the car. We were parked 2 blocks away, watching guests arrive. His hands trembled in his lap. She made this public, I said. We're just setting the record straight. Greg Brennan had coordinated with the police. Detective Lisa Chen from the fraud division was already inside, positioned near the exit. 2 uniformed officers stood by unmarked cars across the street. Victoria had no idea what was coming. At 6 p.m., the ceremony began. I walked in alone, Ethan waiting outside as planned. The room was packed. Firefighters, neighbors, friends I'd known for decades. And there, front row, sat Victoria in a black dress, playing the grieving widow. She saw me and stiffened. I'd been radio silent since Grand Cayman. She didn't know I'd found him. Chief Anderson took the podium. Tonight, we remember those we've lost, and we honor the family members who carry their legacy forward. He began reading names, each one followed by applause, by tears, by stories of bravery. Then, Ethan Hartley, beloved son of Mason Hartley, husband of Victoria Hartley, taken too soon in a tragic accident. The room fell silent. Victoria dabbed her eyes with a tissue, a performance I'd seen too many times. Chief Anderson continued, "We'd like to invite Victoria to say a few words." She stood gracefully, smoothing her dress, walked to the podium, the picture of elegant sorrow. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice soft and controlled. "Ethan was an incredible man, a loving husband, and though his death was sudden, I find comfort knowing he's at peace." The back door opened. Every head turned. Ethan walked in. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts. Someone screamed. Chairs scraped as people jumped to their feet. Victoria's face went sheet white. The tissue slipped from her fingers. How?" she stammered. Ethan walked down the center aisle, eyes locked on her. "Hi, Victoria. Miss me?" Chief Anderson stepped forward, confused. "Mason, what's going on?" "That's my son," I said loudly, standing. "The one Victoria claimed was dead. The one she held a funeral for. The one whose death she used to steal everything I had." The crowd buzzed with confusion and shock. Phones came out. People started recording. Victoria backed away from the podium. "This is insane! Ethan, tell them!" "Tell them what?" Ethan stopped 5 feet from her. "That you forced me to fake my death? That you threatened my father? That you committed fraud, forgery, and extortion? You're the one who signed the documents." She voice rose, panicked. "You're complicit in everything." "Actually," Detective Chen stepped forward, badge visible, "we have a recording of you admitting to orchestrating the entire scheme. Mr. Hartley here has agreed to testify in exchange for immunity." Victoria's eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit, for help, for anything. "This is entrapment," she hissed. "You can't—" "Victoria Hartley," Detective Chen continued, "you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, filing false death certificates, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes." The uniformed officers moved in from the sides. Victoria tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd had formed a wall of witnesses. "This is wrong!" she shouted as they cuffed her. "Ethan wanted this. He agreed to everything." "Then why did you tell Mason he was never supposed to know I was alive? Why did you threaten him? Why did you try to steal his house?" Victoria's face twisted with rage. "Because you were both in my way." The room went dead silent. Detective Chen read her rights as they led her towards the door. Victoria fought every step, screaming accusations, threats, desperate lies. The crowd parted, and as she passed me, she locked eyes with mine. "You'll regret this, Mason." "No," I said quietly. "You will." The doors closed behind her. The room remained frozen for 3 full seconds. Then Ethan turned to me, and I pulled my son into a hug while 200 people watched a dead man come back to life.
3 months later, I stood in my kitchen, watching Ethan fix the leaky faucet I'd been meaning to repair since spring. "Got it," he said, tightening the last bolt. Water ran clear and steady, no drips. "Good as new." "Just like us," I said. He smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in over a year. "Yeah, just like us." The legal battle had been swift once Victoria's confession went public. The district attorney hit her with 14 charges: fraud, forgery, filing false documents, attempted theft, conspiracy. The investors she'd been working with were arrested 2 weeks later, a money laundering ring that had been under federal investigation for months. Ethan's testimony, combined with the financial records Gabrielle uncovered, brought the whole operation down. Victoria took a plea deal, 15 years, eligible for parole in 10. Ethan got immunity, a second chance, a clean slate. And me, I got my son back. The house was officially mine again. Deed transfer reversed, all forged documents voided. Patricia made sure of that. Ethan moved into his old bedroom while he rebuilt his life. Got a job at a local accounting firm. Started therapy. Took it one day at a time. We had dinner together every night now, just like we used to. "Dad?" Ethan set down his wrench, wiping his hands on a towel. "I never properly thanked you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For believing something was wrong when everyone else would have just accepted it." His voice wavered. "You saved my life." I crossed the room and gripped his shoulder. "You're my son. I'd walk through fire for you. You know that." "I do now." He paused. "I'm sorry I ever doubted it." "Don't apologize. Just promise me something. Anything. If you're ever in trouble again, any kind of trouble, you come to me first. No secrets, no running. We face it together." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I promise." That evening, I sat on the porch with a beer watching the sunset over the neighborhood I'd called home for 40 years. Greg stopped by, dropping off some steaks for the weekend. "You're a local legend now, you know," he said, settling into the chair beside me. "People at the station can't stop talking about it. Mason Hartley, the man who caught a ghost." I laughed. I just trusted my gut. "That's the lesson, isn't it?" Greg took a sip of his own beer. "Trust your instincts, even when everyone tells you you're wrong." He was right. I thought about everything I'd learned these past few months. About manipulation. About how someone you trust can twist reality so completely that you start questioning your own sanity. About how easily paperwork can be forged, identities stolen, lives destroyed with nothing but a signature and a lie. Victoria counted on me being too grief-stricken to ask questions, too old to fight back, too isolated to find help. She underestimated a father's love. And that's what I wanted people to understand. If you ever find yourself in a situation that doesn't feel right, documents that don't add up, stories that change, loved ones who suddenly cut you out, trust that feeling. Dig deeper. Ask questions. Don't let anyone gaslight you into silence. Keep copies of everything. Financial records, legal papers, text messages, emails. Documentation saved my life and Ethan's future. Find people you trust. I couldn't have done this alone. Patricia, Gabrielle, Greg, Detective Chen. They believed me when I had nothing but suspicions and a wedding ring. And, most importantly, never stop fighting for the people you love, even when it seems impossible, even when the whole world tells you to give up. Because the truth always matters. Justice always matters. Family always matters. Ethan came out onto the porch, 2 fresh beers in hand. He passed one to Greg, then sat on the steps beside me. "You know what I've been thinking?" Ethan said, staring at the sunset. "What's that?" "Maybe I should become a firefighter after all, like you."
I smiled. You'd be great at it. Yeah? Yeah. You're already pretty good at walking through fire and coming out the other side. He laughed, really laughed, and for the first time in months, everything felt right. My son was home, my house was safe, and Victoria's lies had finally burned out. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in burning buildings. Sometimes they're fought in living rooms and courtrooms and funeral homes. But if you've got love, truth, and determination on your side, you'll win every time. And that's a lesson worth remembering. So here's my question for you. Was I right to handle it this way? Tell me in the comments below. What would you have done in my position? If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life tales, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Because trust me, there's so much more on my channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next life story.